In 1917 in Russia, when Lenin came to power, Western countries were very distrustful of the policies and intents of the Soviet Union. World War II and the events right after it justified this distrust. There was conflict between dictating communism and capitalist democracy. In 1989, the fall of communism began. The fall of the Berlin Wall made it clear that communist governments could no longer control the wish of the people for a free country. Millions of people had been deprived of basic human rights. Dozens of countries were being controlled by the Russian communists. This part of Europe was called the Iron Curtain. When the Soviet Union fell, it allowed many people to finally control their own lives. Hungary was one of these countries, and that was where General Electric decided to make the first substantial Western investment behind the former Iron Curtain. In the late 1980s, my father, David Gadra, was working in Cleveland, Ohio for General Electric. It was, and still is, one of the largest lighting companies in the U.S., but they did not have much influence on the rest of the world outside of the United States. To succeed as a business, they needed to expand. Europe was a good place to start. So in 1987, they met with representatives from some Austrian and Hungarian banks about their interest in buying a Hungarian lighting company. They negotiated for a few years, and in 1989, GE decided to acquire controlling interest for the company. Then a trip into Budapest was scheduled. Nobody really knew what would meet them there. They were influenced by their country's opinion. Communists were enemies and were not to be trusted. The first trip, on arriving, confirmed their worst fears of what they would find. When they reached the border of Hungary, they were immediately escorted by Hungarian planes. The planes followed them until they landed in the airport. Then they were shown to a secure place in the airport and surrounded by military vehicles with mounted machine guns. A military official entered the plane, followed by an attendant with an automatic weapon. The GE workers were asked to show their passports. After a couple of tense seconds, a car pulled up next to the plane, and the people with whom GE had been negotiating climbed out. They explained that the escorts and secure arrival had been the wish of the Hungarian government to make sure their new partners were completely safe. My father spent 4 years in Hungary, facing many challenges while working with GE. Managers who didn't know how to manage, leaders who could not lead, and people who had positions of authority who had no real wish to work. GE had to remake the business, kind of how the country remade itself. GE decided to have the company be led by younger people that had been educated in the 1980s during the fall of communism. It was life-changing for both the people working for GE and the people in Hungary they were helping. GE got to see and contribute to the renaissance of a new democratic country. My father is still in touch with Hungarians who took the positions of leadership when GE went back to America. None of the workers for GE ever thought that this miracle could happen, the rebirth of a company. Hungary, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and many other countries behind the former Iron Curtain have struggled to rebuild social, economic, and educational infrastructure. And my father was one small part of the big change from communism to a democracy in Hungary.